morning, everyone. How are you doing? Find your little emojis and show me your mood of the day. Tuesday after a long weekend. I'm expecting either a happy emoji or I don't know if you have a tired one on there. we had we had quite a fun weekend at our place. Just everything. We did golfing, we did yard games, we did a bonfire. It totally felt like a long weekend. So glad you could wake up and think about math today and join us on this bright Tuesday morning. It's pretty awesome. So we are in session 2 today, and you all were just so keen and sharp. Last time it was like you just had the answers, you were tracking with us. It was so great to see your passion for what you were doing. And today we're going to dig in a little bit more, and we're going to focus on the counting back the change and on decimals and exchange rate. So counting back change, give me your mood on that. Are you a thumbs up? I'm so good at that, I can do it blindfolded. Are you a thumbs down like, hey, I could use a little bit of practice? Give me your mood on the counting back the change. It's like a little practice could work. Some are like, yeah, I'm kind of okay with that. And you know, it's a whole other thing under pressure too, right? When the customer's standing in front of us and there's a baby screaming and the little receipt paper jams in the receipt printer. All those things happen at the moment we're trying to count back change. So that's why we're going to practice that. How do you feel about decimals? Are you a decimal lover? Adding, subtracting, multiplying decimals. Are you feeling like thumbs up? I love that. I live for decimals. Thumbs down like, a little practice never hurt anyone. Show me what you're feeling there about when I say just the decimals and adding, subtracting, multiplying decimals. Give me a little bit of your mood on those. Trying to get a sense of really how deep we want to go in each of these topics with y'all. And I gotta love our teacher who's just like so pumped up with decimals. It's just like, it's just fun. I bet, Leah, did you do decimals this long weekend? Well, we talk about decimals as we do this course because money is in decimals. So that's a real important one that we want to make sure we grab a hold of. We always love to thank our funders, and as you know from joining us last time, we did take a moment to thank ERSDC and Manitoba Education and Training. We're grateful that there's these bodies that are willing to fund these programs so that you don't have to pay for it with your hard-earned money, but there's some funding to support it. So we showed you this screen last time and just talked a little bit about our West Center, or that Workplace Education and Skills Training Center, which we do have in Steinbach. Of course, it's in a number of other towns across the province too. So if Winnipeg is closer for you, that's an option. If Flin Flon, Dauphin, Thompson, The Paw, Steinbach, if any of those areas are closer for you, just by visiting wem.mb.ca, you'll find out that you have a classroom close to you. And I do recognize one of the names of one of our attendees who I think has been to our West Center in Selkirk. And so if Gwen is somewhere in the background there, I just want to give you a shout out and just welcome you all to come sometime and visit us in person. Of course, we're closed right now because of COVID-19, but as the classrooms open up, we certainly want to extend a welcome to you to come and study with us in person. So Leah, let's touch on a little bit what we left them to do last week.
Yeah, we had some homework. So just wondering, anyone have any opinions on the apps? Did anyone try any of the apps? I know for myself, I love the Mahjong app. There's just something so satisfying about the little boxes disappearing once I've got the right addition or multiplication answer. So that's my favorite. Does anyone have any comments? And my kids love the sushi math. That's their favorite.
Oh, I didn't try the sushi math. Maybe up in the chat on the left side, if you can give us a word on which of the apps you tried. It doesn't have to be your favorite. We'd just love to know which ones you tried this week. So there's a chat box to the left side of your screen. If you can't see it fully, there's a little arrow that you can click on to expand the chat box. And let us know some of those names of the apps that you tried out. I tried out, of course.
We've got new ones as well, new ones. Any new ones that maybe you just typed in and found?
For sure. We want to know because maybe you found one that we don't even know about, and we want to try it and use it. So this is
Math Games is a good one. And it hit the button. That actually hit the button is the one I got from my kids' teacher. She sent that one home, so that was one that came from my kids' school.
Awesome. Couple math games. Right.
And that's a good website too, if I recall. Yeah.
So, you know, as life happens, sometimes it's a challenge to pop on and do these things every single day or to practice every single day. But our hope is that you'd practice a couple times a week. Try to do it every day if you get a chance. Maybe give yourself a time limit. If you're going to pop on Facebook or Instagram, be like, you know what, I'll give myself 10 minutes here and then 10 minutes doing some of the math game stuff. So that's pretty cool. Thanks for trying those out, you guys. And please, like, as you search and discover more, email us what those are and tell us about some new ones out there. They're getting developed all the time. So there's apps that we don't even know that exist. Anyone else want to share? We've heard from our keeners, Clinton and Rebecca here. And is there anyone else who could share with us one of the math apps that they visited or something that they tried even in the homework package?
Everyone's being shy today. That's all right.
Well, it was long weekend. We'll give you that. So let's jump in and let's talk about the cash handling at the point of sale. So give me a thumbs up if you've heard of the term POS. There are POS systems for sale. There's POS behaviors. Awesome. So we understand that POS really means point of sale. So lots of things happen at the point of sale, right? So customer can shop all through the store, they can kick the tires, window shop, do what they want to do. But at the moment that they're going to pay, that's the point of sale. And so the customer has a job and you have a job to do at that time. And if you're the one in the cashier's seat, you have a couple options on how the money part is going to handle. Now for this section today, we're assuming people are paying in cash. We know that, of course, people love to pay with credit card or debit card. Maybe some institutions still take a check, but we are practicing our cash handling. So really you have two options on what's going to happen in your role as cashier. You have the option to either give change or to count back change. Now, I would say that 90% of the time, giving change is probably what you're going to do. And giving change is really defined by you've put the amount into the cash register. You've said you've maybe scanned all their items or typed in all their items. And the cash register gives you a subtotal. And the subtotal is the amount that they owe before taxes are computed. And then if you hit total on the cash register, you get the total amount that is due. Now the cool thing about every modern cash register is they're mostly calculators. So once it gives you the total due, you're able to type in how much money the person gave you. And when you do that, the computer becomes the calculator for you and tells you how much to give back. Now, in this idea of giving change, basically, the computer's telling you, you're inputting the data, but the computer's doing the calculation and saying, hey, they owed you this much, they gave you that much money, now give them this much change. And so you're counting out the amount of change you're going to give them. Now, if the cash register happened to be down, you would definitely have an option to use a calculator for that. And probably most employers would encourage you to use a calculator for that. And again, if we just think about sort of that math anxiety when everything's happening at one time at the till, a good practice would be to do some of this practicing by yourself at home. when you're not on the job site or when you're not even in this class right now, where you just pull out that calculator, get used to where it is on your phone. How do you open it on your phone? Because it actually swipes from a different place if you have an iPhone or a Samsung. There's two different methods to call up your calculator. So can you easily get your calculator with one swipe on your phone? Practice that. And then when you do, just practice the right order of putting the numbers in, because the calculator is only able to put in and input out data that you've put in a certain order. So just quite foundationally, I would add up all the items someone's buying, and I would have my total that they owe me. Well, what I would do is I would take the amount of money they're giving me. So maybe verbally I've told them that they owe me $15, but they've decided to pay me $20. Well, I would start with the big number that they've given me, and I would put 20 into the calculator, hit the minus button, and then put in 15, the amount that they actually owe for their goods, and then hit the equal sign. And the calculator would tell me you need to give them back $5. So there is a method to use calculators, cash registers, even math with pencil and paper to calculate how much you should give someone. But we want to spend some time practicing the counting back change. And the cool thing about this is if you can learn how to count back change, you can actually always come up with the right amount of money to give someone and never make the calculation. You don't need a calculator. You don't need the cash register to tell you how much. Really, if you can just add, adding will get you to the proper amount. So I love counting back change because really I get to just start with the value of goods of what they've purchased. That's my starting number. So instead of starting at 0, I start at the number of what they've bought. So the total of what they've bought is my starting number. And then I just count up until I get to the number of the amount of currency they gave me. So let's go back to that $15 example. If I knew that someone owed me $15 to cover what they've paid for, but they tried offering me a $20 bill, I could use a calculator to do 20 minus 15. I could do that calculation in my head, or especially if the numbers are more complicated than a whole number, or what I can do is I could say, hey, 15 is my starting number, and now I just have to count from 15 up to 20. And that difference in between 15 and 20 is the amount of change I'm going to give them. So it's kind of a fun exercise to do. And really part of the key is you sort of have to learn to talk to yourself. So when you're practicing at home, definitely talk to yourself so you get comfortable in hearing how to count up to the amount you're trying to give to someone. Now, it's rare. We've talked with employers in our region here, and it is rare that the cash register goes down and that someone doesn't have the answer in front of them on the calculator. However, it does happen, and when it happens, they want their employees to be able to own the system of knowing how much money to give back to someone. The other part is there is also employee error. So sometimes, again, dealing with the $15 example, maybe I know that the people owe me $15 and I know that they've handed me a 20, but I very quickly typed 20 into the till. And have you ever done this? Give me a thumbs up if you've ever done it and you just hit extra zeros. And so maybe you typed in that they actually gave you $2,000. And so then when you hit total after doing that, the cash register is giving you the wrong amount of what kind of change to give them, right? Because you put the wrong amount of how much cash they gave you. So in those settings, not only can it be helpful to know how to count back change because a cash register might go down, but it also might be that you had a little bit of a slippery finger and you hit too many zeros or the wrong number, or maybe the customer even changed their mind. Sometimes you see they've pulled up the 20, you type it in and hit enter, and now the cash register is telling you to give them $5 back. But then the person goes, oh wait, I actually want to break a 50. And so then they hand you a $50 bill instead of a 20. Well, now you can't rely on what the cash register is saying. You have to be able to count back the difference. So we're not just thinking about power outages, we're thinking about those moments we're on the spot. And could you please give me a thumbs up if you have been somewhere and you heard the waitress or the cashier or the bank teller count back the money to you that you should be getting? Like you heard them count it out loud. Have you ever heard someone use the verbal, use the audio to count? This is counterintuitive. Probably when we hear someone counting out loud, it's a little bit like, are they talking to themselves? Do they know how to count? It's actually the total opposite. The people who are really good at counting back change do it out loud. So I just want to give you freedom. You talk to yourself when you're practicing. Even now, you've all joined us in a webinar, and I'm about to give you an exercise that we're going to do together. Well, I can't hear you. Your microphones are not on. I don't even have the ability to turn them on if I wanted. You're totally private right now. I cannot hear anything you're saying. I can't hear if there's a dog barking. It's private. So while you're alone doing that, when we're counting, I want you to count out loud, because if you can gain that confidence that you're able to count out loud in a logical, sequential manner to be able to count back the change, then you'll be able to do that in public. When you're at the point of sale, you'll be able to do that with people, and you won't feel like, oh gosh, I'm talking to myself. Does this sound weird? No, not at all. So before we get into the coins, because the coins is the part that really takes the most practice, we just want to make sure we understand the philosophy. And it's a little bit clearer to see that philosophy when we're talking about dollars, because those are whole numbers. So let's imagine we're doing something with a $100 bill. Now the customer came and their total fluked out to be an even $69. They don't owe us any change, just an even $69. And they hand us a $100 bill. Well, at the point when they hand me a $100 bill, and here's a tip for you, in case you have any shyster customers. Anyone ever had a shyster customer who tries to take more money back than what they're due? You wouldn't ever put your bill into the money tray. You don't open up the little lift and put the $100 bill in. You only ever lay it right on top so that there can never be a dispute about what money they gave you. The money's laying on top. So while it's there, I've got the $100 down, and the bonus byproduct of that is if I don't put it away and I leave it up where I can see it on the till, then I get to remind myself what my target number is that I'm counting back to. And if I got distracted partway through, I wouldn't have to remember what number I'm trying to get to. I could just count what was in my hand and look at that $100 bill laying on top of the till, and then I would know where to go. So really, there are a couple ways you can say this out loud. I'm just going to tell you the way I say it out loud. So I would start at 69, and I would say $69 plus 1 makes 70. And as I say the plus 1 makes 70, I pull a loonie out of the till and I hold that in my hand. And now I know I'm at 70, and I'm trying to work my way up to the number 100. So I would say, and 10 makes 80. And I would pull a $10 bill out and I'd hold that in my hand. So now I'm holding $11 in my hand, but I'm not thinking of it as 11. I'm not counting it out as it gets into my hand. All I'm counting is to try to get to 100. So now I know I'm at the number 80. I could add another even 20, and that would take me to $100. So now I'm holding $31 change in my hand, but I never counted it as $31. I counted it as $1 more would take me to $70, $10 more would take me to $80, and $20 more would take me to $100. So if we see it in a dollar bill way, again, with a smaller number, let's see if we can picture it as we're pulling money out of a till, right? So customer's bill comes to an even $13, and they're going to hand me a 20. Probably the most common currency that people pay with is a 20. So I would take my $20 bill, I would lay it on the till, I would not tuck it away in the little slot where all the 20s go. I would leave it sideways up on top so I could see that 20, and I know that that's my goal of what I'm counting to. And I would start at the number of what they owe. So that's my base number, and I would say 13 plus another $2 makes 15, and I would grab a toonie. And now that I'm at 15, that's a beautiful round number where I can just say, oh, another 5 would take me to 20, and I could grab a $5 bill and hand them their change. Now, I'm curious if when we talk about it with the bills, can you show me with your emoji if the conceptual part of this makes sense? Maybe you haven't practiced it, maybe you haven't had to do this before. Do you have a picture of how it works when we're talking about the dollar bills? Because there is a visualization with this, right? We're visualizing not only what the numbers represent, but what each bill represents and how we get it to those numbers. So I see we have a couple of people who can picture it, and that's the thing. You'll start to visualize how it comes together and how you fill the gap in between 13 and 20 or whatever your numbers are. You're just filling the gap. And the cool thing is you become a human calculator. So you didn't have to do subtraction. You didn't have to calculate it and carry any numbers over to other columns. Just by adding up by little bits at a time, $2, $1, $5, by adding up in those bits, you get to the total of how much change you should count back to them. Now it gets a little bit muddy when we start bringing in the coins. So we are picking some good solid numbers to start with so that we can picture it. Now here's a little tip though. A lot of us have a gap when we think about which coin represents which value. So a quarter, 25-cent piece, a quarter represents 25 cents, whereas a loonie represents 100 cents. And I found in teaching people about money that there's a little bit of confusion sometimes with nickels and dimes. We don't use nickels and dimes as much. And so when we ask ourselves, quickly, how do I add up this and that? The difference between a nickel and a dime is one thing where the words don't resonate with us as quickly. So maybe laying out your coins or even drawing out your coins in a way that starts with the biggest and goes to the smallest. Maybe you start with a toonie and then a loonie, a quarter, dime, nickel. The reason it's confusing is because an actual nickel coin is bigger than a dime. And I don't know why they did this. It actually had to do with the actual nickel that went into a nickel and making the weight represent something. But now it's confusing to people because the bigger coin is worth less money than the tiny, tiny coin. So I do want to encourage you to write that out and practice it and remind yourself a dime is 10 cents, a nickel is this, here's what they look like. And some of you, that might be something that you're strong in already, but if it's something where you just find, hey, every once in a while I get stumped, it's probably your nickel and your dime that stumps you, and those will be the ones you're going to want to write down. But in our practice one that we have today, we have one dealing with $13.75. So if someone handed me a $20 bill to pay for that, I don't really want to do 20 minus 13.75 and then I have to do the math in all the columns. Instead, I could just quickly add. I don't even need to reach for a calculator. I can just add and go ahead. So what I would do is I would say 13.75, well, 25 takes us up to 14. And once I'm at 14, I know that one more dollar takes me to 15. I would hold those in my hand, those two coins that I've identified so far. And then I would say plus 5 makes 20. And I could get up to the $20 bill having only had to use 2 little coins and then one $5 bill. Now, if we want to practice that with our coins, we have to remember that pennies are no more, right? So we're not just adding up and counting back how much change we give someone, but we're also rounding before we even count it. So whatever our amounts are, if there's a penny in the picture, we flip into our rounding skills, and you probably wrote down your rules, right? 3 and up do this, 2 and down do that, 7 and up do this, 6 and down do that. Like, you probably wrote your rules out. So having those at hand, let's look at this example. We work at the Canadian Tire Garden Center. What a great job. Wouldn't that be awesome? Working outside, watering plants, that would be an awesome job. And the customer owes us $21.66, and they hand us $22. I would like you to take a second with those coins that you brought along today, whether they're the real coins or you made paper coins. I would like you to just take a second here, and I'll give you some time. Count that back out loud. Get from 66 up to 100. Go ahead and do that. Now, the cool thing about playing with change is that we can take different routes to get to the same answer, because different coins can be used in the application of this. Now, what I did in my calculation for it is I rounded 2166 down to 2165. Show me your thumbs up if you rounded it correctly to 2165, and that became your base number. Good. Being able to round that right away, that's huge, you guys. And you could practice rounding just when you're shopping. When you see prices of stuff, just try rounding it when you look at on the shelf. So we take our number down to 2165. Did anyone grab the same combination of what I did? Did you grab a nickel and 3 dimes? Or give me a thumbs down if you grabbed a different combination of coins. So thumbs up if we grabbed the same coins, thumbs down if you grabbed another. Isn't that so cool? So maybe what some people did is they grabbed a dime to get them up to 75 cents, and they grabbed a quarter to get them up to 100. Is that how you did it? Give me a thumbs up if you ended up grabbing a dime and a quarter. So cool. See, this is what I love about it, because there's actually not a wrong answer here, right? We could give all nickels, and actually that's why the practice matters, because can I get a witness if you've been a cashier and you're out of nickels or you're out of quarters or something in your till? Has that ever happened to you? It's totally happened to me. And if you're in that zone where all of a sudden one of your trays is empty and you're calling for change and no one's bringing it, you have to get creative like this and use different combinations. So let's try another one. So now we work at Tim Hortons. The customer owes $2.13 and they're going to pay you with $3. How would you count back that change? Go ahead and count it out with your money. So we'd be rounding up to 215. And in my case, I added another 10 cents to take me to 225. And then I grabbed 3 quarters to take me up to $3. Did your combination of change look like mine? If it's a thumbs up, if you use the same combination of coins, and a thumbs down if you were able to make it work with a different combination of coins. It's neat to see how we naturally just add with different ways, right? Like I love getting to the 25 because to me adding with quarters is so much faster. So I automatically take it there right away. Whereas you could have easily just taken this to 220 and then done other things to try to get yourself back up to the $3. So we'll do one more, and this one's kind of 2-part. So now we're at McDonald's, the customer owes us $2.12 and they hand us a $5 bill. So we're starting with the number $2.12, and what kind of change are we going to give back? This time, I want to do something a little different. Count out the change, count it out loud. I can't hear you, talk to yourself. And then when you find out how much you've counted back, add it up and put it over in the chat on the side for me there. So if you've added up how much you've counted out, what did you end up giving back to the customer? Pop it over in the chat for me, the amount that you're giving back to them. And I'm hoping you're not using the calculator for this one. So you've started at 210 as your base number, and you've counted up to $5. And then when you ended up with all that money, how much was it in that pile? We had one person who says it's 290. Anybody else get any other answers? So if you're getting to the 290, your rounding is right on the money, and getting in there at the beginning is tricky because you're first thinking about rounding it down to the 210, and then from there you're trying to get up to the $5. So that's good. I'm really glad you guys are trying and counting it out. And you can see what I gave you in that one was a little bit of a trick question, right? Because I asked you to count out all the change by counting back, but then you end up with the sum of coins and you don't know how much it is. So then you add it up and then you know the answer, and that's the answer I got you to write over there for me. So that really applies when you're dealing with big numbers. So if someone's paying you with a $100 bill, often they don't want you to just only count it back. They also want to know how much was left if they themselves don't know how to count back. But I think you'll find that with a lot of customers, if you will count back out loud and they can hear how you're counting back to the number, they totally trust what you've done, and it makes for a really efficient transaction. And then just understand there's a lot of money rounders, and this is totally me, like almost like every week at the store. This is me. I love to always round and try to get myself so I don't have very many coins. So let's say we're in that same scenario. The customer owes us $2.12. And instead of just giving us a $5 bill, they say, oh, hang on, I'll give you another dime. Why did they do that? Does anyone have a sense of why they do that? When they owe us $2.12, why are they giving us $5.10? It seems like they're giving us so much money, but then how much change do we give them? Pop it up in your chat on the left. Show me how much change you're gonna give. Awesome, yeah. See, the customer was able to round that number of what was due, right? They said, oh, if I owe you $2.12, that automatically rounds to $2.10. So instead of giving you a $5 bill and ending up with all this change, why don't I just give you a $5 bill plus the 10 cents, and then I get an even $3 back instead of the $2.90. So I'm guilty of this as a customer. I do this all the time. And it is something you do want to practice by yourself, pre-thinking it. So talking out loud and knowing right away, oh, you owe $2.12, oh, you're paying with cash, that rounds to $2.10. You'd like to pay with, and they hand it to you. And being able to do that and process it helps you when they partway through the transaction say, oh wait, I want to give you a quarter too. So I like these slides. There's this WikiHow website. Now, I'm not a Wikipedia fan, and it's not true research. So please don't use Wikipedia to do any fact checking in your life or write any research papers or presentations. It's not cool for that. However, I do love the visual on how the WikiHow did this one. So if you just want to make a note of this particular website, and it is mentioned in your handbook today, but it's a cool visual because it helps you to see really what the money is representing and how you're giving it back. And I know that we all picture it in such different ways, right? So a lot of people are really, really passionate and good at subtraction. That's not my thing. I'm better at adding than subtracting. So some people would take $20 minus $7.59 and they just love going that way. That's not my jam. I'm an adder. So I like going the other way. I can start at $7.59 and I can keep adding and working my way up. So depending what you need to see it visually, something will look different in each one of your minds about how the money represents values. So I just thought this was a cool website because it really lets you picture the worth and how to give that out. Now, because money is not always whole numbers, people don't always owe you an even $13 or they don't owe you an even $20. But because they owe you these random amounts, money actually is decimals, right? Anything to do with coins means we're breaking up a whole number into a bunch of smaller parts, and those parts represented with coins in money they relate to decimals. So Leah's popping on and she's going to take over our decimal chat because there's so many place values with decimals. And when it comes to money, if you're ever popping on to use a calculator, the calculator doesn't know which place values you want. So it's going to give you way more than just what the cash register might. So Leah's video feed's a little sketchy for whatever reason. I'm going to turn my camera off and see if that helps out.
I think everyone can hear me still. So maybe give me a thumbs up. Just, yeah, you can hear me? Okay, good. So you might just not be able to see me. Maybe it'll calm down here in a minute, hopefully. But we'll get started anyway. So working with decimals. Decimals, like fractions, are a way to represent numbers that aren't whole numbers. So, you know, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are all whole numbers. Anything in between, you know, 1.25, 7.89. I'm just going to turn on and off here and see if that makes a difference. Those are all our numbers in between, and that's why we have decimals and fractions, is to represent all those in between things. And really, decimals isn't that complicated, because when you think about it, you were just working with decimals. You've just spent the last little while adding decimals, right? Money is decimals. So just looking at decimals in a different light isn't much more tricky. If you look at the chart here, I just wanted to remind everyone about, to the left side of the decimal, those are your whole numbers. To the right side, those are numbers that are less than a whole number. So your ones, your tens, your hundreds, those are all your whole numbers. To the right, your tenths, your hundreds, your thousands, those are your cents. Those are your decimals. So sort of just remember that to yourself. Anything with the THs are to the right, and those are your change. And then the other side is your whole numbers. Move on here. So we talked about rounding whole numbers last week. I'm just gonna talk for a few minutes without my face here. Maybe that'll help better. I'll try back on in a minute here. So when you're rounding decimals, the biggest thing is to remember what you want to round to. Now, obviously, we're working with money. So if you look at that chart, we're rounding to the hundreds. So you might do a calculation, and you might actually end up getting 4 decimal places. You might be at the 10,000s, but you're going to round to the hundreds spot if you're working with cash, right? We don't say to someone, you owe $1 and 0.175 cents. It's going to be 0.18 cents or 18 cents. So it's really important to understand when you're rounding, what you're rounding to. So when you're working with money, you're always looking at the hundredths spot, and that's where you want to round to. So it's really going to depend what the thousandth is that will determine what the hundredth is, right? Because remember the rule of thumb, 5 and over, you're going to round up. So if you look in your booklet on page 5, there's a 75.32 at the top. If there was a 5 beside that 2 would increase to a 3, and you'd actually have 75.33 cents. So just things like that to remember. 5 and up, you go up. 4 and down, you're going to round down. So we're just going to try a couple here. And I'd love for you to pop your answers in on the side there, just to see. So let's take a look at the first one. 3.1216 rounded to hundredths, right? That also might be shown as round to 2 decimal places, because 2 decimal places is a hundredth. What would your answer be? If you want to pop it into the side there, the messages, just let's see what we get. Everyone's being shy today. I'll give you the first answer here. It'd be 3.12, right? Because you're rounding. Oh, sorry, not 3.12. What am I saying here? 3.14. Sorry, I put the wrong answer in.
No.
Oh, you know what? I just realized this is my fault. The workbook and the PowerPoint, the workbook has a 4, the PowerPoint has a 2. So disregard, we'll go by what the PowerPoint's going by today. So it would be 3.12. So that's my fault. I'll make a note of that. Sorry about that. It's in your workbook. It says 3.15. It should say 3.12. So same with the second one. Let's look at that one. Just looking at the PowerPoint, what would this be rounded to the thousands? So thousands would be 3 decimal places. What would you get there? Now remember, look at that 4th decimal place. Is it 5 or higher or 5 or lower? Good. I see a 3.122. That would be your answer. Now, if that 6 was a 4, it would be 3.121. So for answer 2, your answer is 3.122. Put it in there. Now for number 3, we've got 1 point. I'm going to shut my camera off again. It's just not working today. We've got 1.2735 rounded to tenths. So rounded to tenths is 1 decimal place. What would we get for that one? Remember, look to your right. What's the number beside the 2? Is it 5 or higher or 5 or lower? Good, 1.3. That's right. 1.3 would be your answer for that one. And how about the last one? 1.2735 rounded to 3 decimal places. So if you look at that chart, 3 decimal places means to the thousands. So what would you get for that one? Perfect. Yep. 1.274 is correct. Excellent, everyone. Good. I don't think decimals are going to be too tricky for all of you. So that, just wanted to bring that out. Quick refresher. Just to note too, the assignments that I gave you, a lot of it is just adding, subtracting, and multiplying decimals. I want you to do that with your calculator. Definitely try it by hand if you want. But what I really want you to work on is rounding. I made sure that the answer keys all had at least 3 to 4 decimal places, and I really want you to work on rounding to 2 decimal places, because that's where a lot of people make mistakes.
Leah, I just want to make a comment there too. Rounding to the 2 decimal places is so key at that cash register spot, because a little later on, Leah's going to be talking to you about converting to from US dollars. We're going to touch on taxes and so on in our other workshops. And when you're doing that with a calculator, the calculator doesn't know that you only need those 2 digits after the decimal. So getting comfortable rounding to the hundreds is really, really key for when you're on the spot at the cash register.
Yes, absolutely. So adding decimals, we won't touch too much on these. I think for the most part people understand, but I just wanted to go over it a little bit. Biggest thing is when you're adding decimals, if you have to do it by hand, make sure those decimals line up. And like I said, you do have some homework sheets. Practice a couple by hand. If you were somewhere and you didn't have a calculator and there's no computers and all you have is a pen and paper, you want to make sure you remember how to do it. And also remember too, the decimals are not always going to be shown. As you can see in here, the little blue and purple decimals, your calculator, when it gives you an answer, it's going to give you 0.32. It's not going to give you 0.320. But just know that there are decimals there. They're not showing up. So we'll just try a couple here. Adding's pretty straightforward. If you have a calculator, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in these answers, only because I want to make sure we get through today quick. Or not quick, sir, but I want to make sure we can get through everything. I really want to work on the exchange rate. So your first answer should be 1.02. Your next one should be 0.45. Your next one should be 72.657. So even just write those down so you have them so that you can try later. Just pop them in your workbook there and you've got them. Subtraction, it's the same thing as addition other than it's subtraction, but you're just lining up the decimals and subtracting. Same thing there, right? Here they didn't add the decimals. If you look at that second one, you could, or sorry, they didn't add the zeros. You could put a 0. It could be 4.100 there. Me personally, I like to see the zeros when I'm subtracting. I like everything to add up or to look even, so it bothers me that there's no zeros, but You do what works for you. And the same thing here, I added a couple in, and I will give you the answers for these ones just so you have them. Practice them with your calculator though. Practice them by hand. 81.22 would be the first. 132.203 is the second. And the last one is 107.517. Same thing there. Those are for the subtraction answers. Take a minute, write those down so you have them. Try them in your calculator. Make sure you work. A lot of times people punch them in. They're not careful about that decimal. Even moving that decimal over one place is going to change your answer. So it's very important that you make sure it's in there correctly. Multiplying decimals. So, most people, same thing here. Most people don't multiply decimals by hand. We all do it with our calculator, right? But I always think it's important to understand how it works in case, same thing there, right? You're stuck somewhere, all you have is a pen and paper, and can be done two different ways. Anyone want to give me a thumbs up? Who loves the old school by hand? Who used to have to do that by hand? When I was in school, they never gave us calculators. Exactly, yeah. We're all old school. But I would prefer a calculator. It's just easier. But you'll see there with a calculator, if you look at the answers by hand, you come up with that zero at the end, whereas with the calculator, it doesn't show that last zero. It doesn't mean that it's not there. They just don't need to show it. But it's just something to remember, right? Because if you're doing a calculation and your answer is 2.5, that's actually $2.50, right? You're not going to say that's not $2.05. It's $2.50. So just remember to add that zero in if you are using a calculator, because you always want to have it two decimal places. So same thing here. I've got a couple, but I will give you the answers because I really want to make you work on the exchange rate ones, because if you're working with cash, if you're working with a business, chances are someone's going to come in, when all this is said and done and we're allowed to cross the border again, people are going to want to travel and they're going to want to bring their American money and they're going to hand that to you, and you're going to have to be able to exchange it. So I'll just give you the answers really quick for these two. Let's see here. We got 19.25 and 15.8. So pop those in your notebook, and same thing there. Try them by hand, try them with your calculator. Just make sure you're comfortable using it. And the calculators are different too. Like I know if it's in different formats, how you hold it, if you don't clear it properly, make sure you're comfortable with your phone or with whatever calculator you use on a regular basis, because even just using different calculators, they work differently. It can change your answer and you not realizing it. I always do a lot of times, if it's a new calculator, I put in 2 times 2. I always know 2 times 2 is 4. So as long as I'm getting that, and then I do it a couple times, because some calculators you have to clear a certain way. So as long as you're getting that 2 times 2 is 4, you're good. That's always sort of my check. So same thing, want more practice? Like I said, I sent you lots of worksheets. Use those to work on. All right, the fun stuff, calculating exchange rates. So who here has worked in a business where you've been given, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, has worked in cash or in a business where you've been given American money and you've had to do that exchange rate? A couple people? Yeah. And it's different wherever you go. I know some businesses won't necessarily go by the daily exchange rate. They'll just say, this is our rate, and we just use that all the time. Other people change it daily, right? I don't know if any of you heard of we change at par. Par just means they're treating American dollars like Canadian dollars. So they're not even calculating exchange. They're just saying, if you're going to give me $5 American and your change is $2, I'm going to give you $2 Canadian. That doesn't usually happen. Usually there's exchange, but if you hear they're changing at par, that just means they're not even using an exchange rate. So basic exchange rate is just how much it costs to exchange one currency for another. Yes, I wish we could be at par these days as well. I wasn't gonna, initially I thought about, oh, we'll do a whole bunch of different ones, but realistically, the only one you're going to be working with is if Americans bring American money. Being close to the border, that would be the most common thing. So that's the one we're going to touch base on. And it's really straightforward. I've got the steps in the book and we're going to go through them. But basically, all you need to know is what the exchange rate is. You multiply the US dollars by the exchange rate, and that's what you get in Canadian. So it really is straightforward. Exchange rate. So someone, an American, someone gives you $5 American, times that by the exchange rate, there's your amount in Canadian. So we're going to do a couple of examples here. So grab your calculator. I don't want you doing this by hand unless you're really hardcore and want to. So let's try this first one. If the exchange rate today was 1.217, what would 25 US dollars be in Canadian? So just pop your answer in to the side there. Tell me what you get. And round it to 2 decimal places if you get a larger answer. Anyone got an answer for me? I'll pop one in. Maybe everyone wants to make sure. You should get $30.43. Initially, it'll look like this. 30.425 in your calculator, and you would round that to 30.43, right? Because anything 5 or higher, you round when you're rounding to 2 decimal places. So good. People were close. That's excellent. That tells me you're getting it. Now, we're going to do one more. This is a little bit trickier. So take a minute and read it. We've got an American comes into a restaurant with American money. His total is $3.75 Canadian. He hands the cashier a $5 US bill. The cash registers are temporarily down, so the cashier must use a calculator. The exchange rate for the day is $1.15. The two examples are in the workbook, and I also put in an exchange site, so there's more time to practice. If you want more, please email me for sure, and I can definitely connect you with some more exchange rate practice. I'm going to pop over to the answer slide here because I don't want everyone struggling either. So I want you to take a look at. I'm a big, when I read a word problem, I pull out all the information and write it out. So what do we know? We know that $3.75 Canadian is what he owes. He gave us a $5 American bill, and the exchange rate is $1.15, or sorry, $1.15. So same thing there. Change American to Canadian. So we take $5 US times the exchange rate, which gives us $5.75 Canadian. Subtract that from his bill, $2 change. Give me a thumbs up. Did anyone get that answer? Or a thumbs down if you didn't get it. Good, excellent, excellent. That makes me very happy. Good. I should have made it harder. No, I'm just joking. Excellent. So like I said, if you do want a little bit more exchange, I can definitely get you some more. I just wanted to bring it up because if you're going to be working with a cash register or any kind of cash, chances are someone's going to bring American money in, and it's really quick. Just remember, exchange rate times American, and that's really all you need to remember. We'll bring Rochelle back on here, and she can finish up.
Woohoo! You guys are good. One thing I notice when I'm doing cash handling at the till is it's not always even an American who's coming to buy. Sometimes someone wants to pay cash and they discover that they just got back from a trip and all they have, they might be a Canadian themselves, but all they have left is their American dollars because they just got back from US or Mexico. So it is funny, like often It would even happen at a restaurant that they would leave a $20 American bill to cover a $20 Canadian amount due. And so just being able to do that exchange helps even for you to get your tip out of the whole deal. So it's a good skill to know how to do that exchange rate, because we want those tips, right? So just when we think about going into next week, the workbook that you have from today, if for some reason you don't have that, please comment for us so we can make sure that we email that to you. But there are those worksheets and things that you can practice on your own. In addition to those, we do want to send you to the fun brain games or the math games that you were talking about earlier in our chat, where you go, and we want to encourage you to pick 2. So last week we asked you to for sure pick 1 and let us know. This week we want you to try out 2 different ones that you haven't tried. So maybe you have your favorite, but if you could just try out 2 new ones, and spoiler alert, we'll ask you next week which 2 you did. And they could be new. They don't have to be ones from our book. So by all means, if there's one that you've heard of or seen, or you Googled it and found it, we're just going to ask you what those look like. We're going to do a little more counting back exercises beyond change. So we want to, today, the hands-on that you did was using your coins and counting back out loud in front of yourself. And next week we want to combine that and mix coins with bills. So I don't expect you to have the $100 cash or whatever it is. Just take regular old paper and make it so it's bills representing different things. So you can make yourself a $50 bill or a couple of them, a couple 20s, a couple 10s, and a bunch of 5s. And those will be your common ones that you'll find in the workplace scenario that you'll handle a lot. So if you can go ahead and just make those, they don't have to be fancy. You don't have a camera, so I'm not going to ask to see what they look like. You just make them so they look like something realistic that says what the dollar value is. And then, like I say, go through the workbook and please reach out to us. If you find that there's something in the material we've covered so far where you're saying, hey, I actually want a little bit more practice on that, or I could use a quick one-on-one phone call to just make sure my skills are where I want them to be on that aspect, whether it's rounding to a certain decimal point or being able to really sense what is that hundredths column, what is that one again, or even flipping back into the stuff we did last week on rounding, estimating. Just reach out to us, and we're happy to help you outside of this setting too, because I know that putting questions in a chat can be hard. Sometimes you have to use 100 words to try to get a question out in the scenario. So by all means, email us, and I'll actually just pop that address up here too. I know you have it in your book, but I just grabbing a note of that email address. You have a way of getting hold of both Leah and I. So before we close off, I just want to ask if we do have any questions you want to cover today before we go offline. And I'll give you a moment to go ahead and put that in the chat. There is a way, you'll notice when you are chatting, you can choose to send something to all and everybody would see that message, or there's a little arrow beside the word all and you could choose the presenters. And so you could send a private message just to Leah and I that only we can see. If you don't want to ask some of your questions in front of the whole group, there's an option to split into a private chat for that also. So we're going to take a look at those presenter chat questions and reach out to you and help you out with the stuff you're at. Otherwise, we will wish you an awesome rest of the week. I hope that you get to enjoy this weather. And before we close, just one sort of math related question. Who's going to plant something this week? Like, who is going to plant a vegetable or a pot or a container or a flower? This is a great week for that. The weather's just going to be beautiful. So I hope you get to use your math skills and actually touch the soil and calculate things out too. Sorry, Leah's Wi-Fi got all weird and her video's flip-flopping.
Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. I don't know what's going on, but
oh, that's
I'll be
technology.
planting plants anyway.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a raging debate whether to plant this week. Some people plant right after May long weekend, and then others say you cannot plant until the full moon in June, which is about June 5th or so. So I'm going to try it both ways and see what wins.
Awesome. Well, have a great day, everyone.
And bye, everyone. Have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Don't forget to email us if you have any questions. And early next week, we will send you the next workbook and stuff to join in with us next Tuesday. Have an awesome